Hi, class. Let's talk about these access specifiers that are an important part of our C++ class definition. There are two of them, private and public. Um, Private is exactly like it sounds. That data is hidden. The data can only be accessed or referred to by members of the class. Other objects that aren't members of this class, meaning they were created from another class, cannot directly access those members. So what do? Well, instead, they go through their public member functions, also called methods. And these are public, meaning that they're visible outside of the class. So somewhere in main, we could just call an object name and then a dot and whatever that public function name is, and we would get access to it. Let me explain better in an example here. Here's that student class written out a little bit more. And we see that it has its set and share of private members and its set and share of public members. The private member variables will stay hidden. The public member methods or functions are callable or able to be referred to outside of the class. Now, with our public functions, they're generally going to be three types. One are setters, two are getters, and three are just other types of functions. We'll get into more advanced ones as we go on. But the two main ones are setters and getters. Setters are going to set a value into a private member variable. A getter is going to get or retrieve that private member variable's value. And here's what those would look like. Sort of functions like this. You know, if we have two private member variables, ID and name here, well, then we would have a setter and a getter for each. So here's the setter. This first one is going to set the ID, and it's just a function. This is a prototype, and we would throw a parameter at it, an integer, and it's going to just take that integer and set the private member variable ID. Similarly for name, it's going to receive a string and then just set that for name. Our getters are these two right here, and those are just going to return the private member variable. Let's take a look at some code then that supports this. Here's some code to explain what I'm talking about with the setters and getters. They are listed right here in our class definition. And you'll see in this example, I've got three private member variables. Each will have its own setter and getter. So let's take a look just at the GPA, double GPA. The getter is going to return that private member variable. And its definition here that we put sort of in this format, this is known as an inline function, and it's a very efficient, just one statement way to format our code here. It's just going to return whatever that value is. Contrasting that is our setter for the GPA, which is just this function right here. And that's just going to receive a parameter and assign that to GPA. Note here that we're just doing kind of a compact coding kind of structure here. This is the exact same format syntactically as the spread format, but we can do these inline formats in a lot more of a compact style just to make our code faster and a little easier to understand. So those are the setters and getters. Apart from that, we can then create any other methods that we might want. It's very common for a class to have just a very rudimentary print method just to spit out the data. So here it does exactly that. And you'll see here that since we are talking of code within our class definition, that we can directly access these private member variables here, directly access them in our public member functions. However, if we were to try that in main, it just simply wouldn't work. We'd get an error saying, nope, we cannot access that that data, it's hidden. You have to go through the getter in order to get that data. So let's look here in our main function now. We're going to just create a couple of objects. And here's the first one, the first student. Now, in this definition, I've created for kind of comparison and contrasting purposes a normal statement, a normal print function here within our main function. So we've got two print functions at play. One is a member of the student class. The other is just a normal, everyday, standard function that we create that interacts with our main. And we'll show the interplay between those. First, here is the call to the print methods, to the classes, to the object's print method, preg.print. Now, you'll note here that we're using the dot notation to access these public member functions, get GPA, set name, set course load. And accordingly, since the dot print method up here is listed as a public function, we can then call it with creg.print. Now that's contrasted with this function here, which is just going to send the object Craig to this print function. So let's take a look at that print function. So down here is its code, and you'll see right away that we cannot access the element directly. We would draw an error if we said s.name or s.gpa. Instead, we've got to go through the getter. Let me show how this code runs just fine as is, and it's pulling the data just fine. But let's just suppose here that we wanted to just try and get that data directly. Since name is a member of the class here, we can try and access s.name. And you see here that we are getting an error immediately. And that is underlined, and the reason we're given is that name is a private member of the student class and thereby can't be accessed. So we just go through its getter, get name. Let's include the parentheses to show that this is a function call. And sure enough, it works now, and we get the data properly retrieved. So check this code out in Blackboard. It'll be posted for your perusal, and I hope it helps.